Over to you, Josh.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Philip. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to this inaugural Lincoln Learn networking session facilitated by the Future Leaders Steering Group. The function of this session really is to be exactly what that tagline says there, which is an accessible conversational networking session for young IOSH professionals. It will be hosted by myself, Josh, and my friend and colleague, Philip, who will shortly be introducing himself and outlining some of the ways that you can get involved today. We really want to hear your experiences, your contributions, and your stories. We want this to be as dynamic, discursive, open, and as accessible as possible. So do please get involved today and also on LinkedIn afterwards. I'm also very pleased to say that we're joined by the IOSH Vice President, Lawrence Webb, the IOSH Vice President, Lawrence Webb, and I think his presence here today is a real vote of confidence in this group being the future of IOSH professionals around the world. As I said, my name is Joshua Calloway, and I'm an Optimization and Integration Manager for Thames Water, which is a bit of a mouthful, I know. On a daily basis, I assist in the running of Beckton Sewage Treatment Works, which looks after 27,000 litres of London sewage every single second. Also to that, I'm on the Future Leaders Steering Group. So I'm going to hand over to Philip now, who's going to outline some of the ways that you can get involved today, whilst also introducing himself. Over to you, Philip.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Philip Lancashire. I am Health and Safety Advisor for Games Workshop, focusing on warehousing and distribution. As Games Workshop being the greatest fantasy miniature makers in the world. So as Joshua was talking about, it's a great sort of discussion webinar that we're having today. So just to go through some things with you to make sure we can have the best experience that we can all have. So ensure your speakers and headphones are switched on and turned up. Please make sure you can hear us and we can hear you when we open the discussion to you. If you wish to join in the conversation, please use the raise hand function. We can then see who's raised their hands and we can start to let people into the conversation when they've got points to make. Please make sure you're on mute at all times and only unmute yourself when you're asked to join in the discussion or want to ask a question in person during the Q&A session. The chat is there as well if you don't want to speak out loud. You can use this option to ask specific questions. What we could do ask is if you are using the chat function, please just insert a Q before your question. That allows us to be able to sift through the chat quickly to find those questions and to put those to the people that we want to, or for us to try and address those if we can. Just as it says at the bottom there, obviously the information and opinions expressed in the upcoming session are those of us as authors and presenters, and you guys as guests, and not necessarily those of the institution of the Occupational Safety and Health or IOSH. So without further ado, I think we'll get started.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Philip. Yeah, so just to reiterate, this really is a networking session where we want to focus on conversation, openness and accessibility. We want to hear your experiences and contributions. It's your chance to meet other talented IOSH professionals and ask questions to future leaders, to share good practice, experiences and tips. We're hoping that the discussion lasts long after this session and spills over onto the likes of the LinkedIn Future Leaders Group. Hopefully, if we get a chance at the end, we'll also like to highlight some of the career resources that are available within IOSH, and hopefully that will answer some of the questions as they emerge. And whilst, as Philip said, this forum is completely open, we do have a couple of areas to kickstart conversation if required. So here are some of the areas for discussion that myself and Philip sort of put together as we were bringing the slides up. So if anyone's sort of brave enough to raise their hand and unmute and share an experience or ask a question, then please feel free. If not, myself and Philip can kickstart the conversation. Over to you.
Just have a double check on your sound there, Josh. It's going a bit quiet. If anybody wants to obviously come forward, you can raise your hand using the function. But I think probably best for us to really kick off, really. So one of the questions that I think has helped me during my looking for work and job searching is maybe to have a bit of a discussion with regards to something like the use of LinkedIn and how to use this effectively for job hunting. I mean, have you used it in your job hunting and career searches, Josh?
Yeah, so just to check that my audio, can you hear me all right there?
Yeah, all good.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I think LinkedIn is a really fantastic tool because it's got those sort of social media elements to an extent where you can build those connections really easily and really effectively. But I also think you get to work and operate on an audience that you wouldn't normally get involved with. So personally, I don't always tend to use it for sort of searching for jobs, but I think that's because I'm quite early career. in the sense that I've bedded into my sort of current role. But what I do use it for is sort of career updates, or to provide if there's a particularly interesting project that I've been involved with, or skills, hard or soft, that I've developed through something. I use it as a real kind of a sort of showpiece, a sort of cabinet to open up and say, look, here's a particular project or job that I was involved with, and here's what I learned from it. So for example, through my role, I've been very privileged to work on some of the large infrastructural projects for the London sewerage system. And every time I've sort of operated with that, I always provide a little bit of an update to say, here's what we're working on, here's the document. So I think whether one uses it as a tool for searching for jobs within the IOSH profession, or just uses it as a sort of structure to show the skills being learned, I think it's a really excellent framework to kind of build that structure and show yourself to be really, really employable. And at the end of the day, you begin to interact with people far beyond your sort of immediate corporate network. But I mean, I know you're recently sort of successful in applying for a role, Philip. So how did LinkedIn sort of feed into that for you?
I've used LinkedIn in the past, and for me, it's more about what LinkedIn was really designed for as a networking and networking site, really. So it was about finding those people who can help you in your job search, those who can help you be a better person, as in an occupational safety advisor. So that's, for me, the key of building the network that you want, really, and looking at the people that you are connected to. Are they providing real value to your your LinkedIn front cover, so to speak, at the time that you want it? And if they're not, then there's a question to say, do I need to keep that link with that person? Is it something that I should be having a link with? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I think that's key when you're looking for job roles and things, to really find those right people, not just from recruiters to obviously get in touch with recruiters to help you find work, but also, as I was saying, those people who are teaching you daily through their posts and things like that on how to be a better IOSH professional. Some people have experience of looking for jobs at the same time you are, or there are people out there with experience who have now got jobs and they can provide stuff via LinkedIn that can really help you, pitfalls and things like that. So I really think it's something that people can really grasp onto and really start to take control of and make use of when they are looking for work. As I say, with recruiters and things, it's nice to see, because they're all on there. You can get access to them. 99% of the time they're posting jobs and things like that. So it's a way to get in there as quick as possible. But it's also there to help you with finding out about learning techniques and interview techniques and all those different things that you could find on there to help you prepare for applying for jobs and going for interviews and things.
I totally agree with that, and I think the utilisation of a lot of the groups, and I know we're sort of shamelessly plugging the Future Leaders LinkedIn group here, but it is that forum to, if you feel within your immediate kind of network that you aren't getting a resolution of an issue, you can really laterally kind of span across an entire industry, an entire geographical kind of arena. And I know sort of last week someone was sort of brave enough to ask a couple of questions on that LinkedIn group, and got sort of 3 or 4 hopefully quite useful responses immediately off the back of that. So it is a really, really useful tool in that regard. I don't know if anyone on this call has had any sort of experience with LinkedIn as a facet for promoting that, or any other experiences.
So just looking through the chat, Peter's put in the chat there. Peter is part of our group as well. But LinkedIn's fantastic for jobs, but even more important for recruiters identifying candidates beyond a CV. It's a very strong place for personal branding development, and helps recruiters build their talent pools, which push candidates into first choice positions when they're considering people for roles. I totally agree with him there, to be fair. I think it does give you that opportunity to put more than just your qualifications and experience across. Sometimes allowing people access to your profile to be able to see the things that you've posted and things that you've commented on does give people the opportunity to view you more as a well-rounded person, rather than just a person on a piece of paper with qualifications and so many years experience in certain industries. So no, I definitely agree with that. and that is a great option in addition to helping you find jobs. I think for me, maybe that leads on to sort of one of those really big questions that maybe we always get asked with regards to qualifications and experience, and how do people really get themselves into the world of work when they've only got a qualification and barely any experience? I mean, is that something you've ever struggled with, Josh?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm still quite early in my career, and yeah, recently sort of finished my graduate scheme with Thames Water, and so I was sort of successful in the position that I now have, but it was quite daunting to basically be interviewed by this person who runs this massive site, and being asked quite sort of technical questions around safety legislation and operational technical procedures and all of those sorts of things. So I think the crucial element for me was I'd spent a year at this site, so just backing myself and saying, actually, you know, all of this sort of ephemera of knowledge that I picked up over that year, if I sort of bring it all together and sort of actually sit down and think about how, if I'm asked a question on settled sewage or dissolved oxygen, that I've got the toolkit that I've developed over the past year to kind of begin to answer that. And then so I think backing yourself is really critical, but then also in doing that, you also identify the areas where perhaps your technical competence is lacking slightly, by no sort of fault of your own, just by sheer experience. And I think it goes a long way if you show a real kind of appetite to try and close that gap. If, you know, a question for me in that interview was, you know, on our efficiency programs, how can we ensure that our financial efficiency programs are done sort of safely? What sort of legislation needs to be involved with that? And it was a question that I didn't know the answer to immediately off the top of my head. So I sort of just said, well, in this role, I think that's the real opportunity to begin sort of pulling that information together and learning. And if you, through your CV and through your LinkedIn profile, as I know sort of Adam in his comment there as well said, if you've shown that sort of real proactivity, I think it goes a really long way to demonstrating that if there is a sort of shortcoming on your experience, you're at least trying to proactively close that gap. I think that goes a very long way than just saying, well, I'm not sure whether I can make that or not. I don't know about yourself. Have you ever been in a position where you feel like you're really excited about this role, but your experiences don't always completely sort of match up with it one-to-one?
I think sometimes that is what happens, and I think maybe as professionals in the industry, we sort of get into a real sticky rut where we see a job and we think, you know, that we've got the knowledge to be able to do that. We might not have the skill in that industry, and sometimes the businesses that we apply for have not got the foresight sometimes to see you as a well-rounded individual, rather than a person who's worked in a certain industry and, oh, you've never worked in this industry before. You know, sometimes job adverts will say you have to have 3 years experience in this certain industry, when you could have people applying for that job who's got 5 years in a totally different industry. But, you know, they're people that know what they're doing, and to be able to apply it to new industries can sometimes be, it can be challenging, but it's definitely possible. And I think sometimes employers have to be a bit more open-minded with that. And hopefully that's what LinkedIn does. You can show those sorts of other skills to be able to look at, this is what I can do, this is how I've worked in this industry, and they can go, well, that looks really impressive. Can we get it across and move it across and try those different things? But I think sometimes it is with employers and recruiters to really think about the people they're employing, and to really open up to the choice that people will come from different industries. And, you know, you're not going to always find somebody for your water company that's already been in the water industry. You know, it's not going to happen. You may have to pick people from other industries, and there's no reason to say that that's a negative. They could bring totally new pair of eyes, totally new hindsight to different ways of working and different methods of doing things that could help the health and safety of the business move leaps and bounds forward.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that refers to what we've perhaps written down here about that sort of transferability of skills. There is a sort of core bank that you can develop really anywhere. And I think there's a really excellent point that Nicole Morrison's made in the chat there, that if you tick every box on a job advert, it's very, very likely that you're overqualified for it. There should be that scope for development in any role you do. you know, I know some of the job adverts that my company put out are sort of 3 or 4 pages worth of KPIs and accountabilities, and there's not really any real way that anyone could feasibly try and achieve all of that. But if you can hit sort of 2/3 or 3/4 and demonstrate a real appetite to try and close out that remaining one, then you're in a really good sort of position. Yeah, I'm just sort of catching up on any other ones in the chat. Philip, is there anything interesting you've seen there?
I'm just flicking through it now. Yeah, there's a lot of people using LinkedIn and do find it a good experience. Some people are commenting that they do find that the level of experience required for jobs does put them off. And I think sometimes that does get people in a bit of a rut, because you might, there is a point to say, well, should you, if you've not got all the experience that they're asking for, should you still apply? And there is an argument to say, yes, you should, because somebody with all those experiences might not apply at all, and you could still be in the running. But then you can sometimes get into that rut of you've applied for so many jobs and never heard back, because there may have been people apply with who tick all the boxes, and that can sometimes become a bit disheartening, and can sort of affect you from a mental health perspective, in the sense of you're applying for all these roles, and you're not hearing back, or you're just getting that standard email to say you've not even been shortlisted for an interview.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult two-edged sword, really, on those sorts of things. But personally, I think if you're missing a couple of years' experience, then it's worth applying for, and hopefully, as people do that, that's when industries will start to open their eyes a bit more to the possibilities of people with a range of skills and a range-widening skills from across different industries. Yeah,
absolutely. I think an interesting comment from Rachel here, regarding she says she sees a lot of adverts sort of as a prerequisite saying chartered membership of IOSH. I mean, I'm an associate member, so I'm still sort of beginning that sort of journey. But I didn't know if you had any thoughts or responses to that, Philip, about, because obviously there's often quite a structured way where you need to achieve this threshold before you can sort of progress into that. So what would perhaps be your advice for someone who's finds himself in that position? A bit of a difficult one, I know, but
it is a difficult one, because there are two sides to the argument, really. You do see a lot of adverts with IOSH on it, and there are two sides to it. One is the side that IOSH is what it is. It is that stamp of a standard that the industry is held to sometimes, and it is a quick way for recruiters and employers to see that people have reached a standard that is expected, and a very good standard. So I can understand how it appears on a lot of adverts and things. Can the industry change itself? I think it could. As Rachel has said there, even on low-level roles, I think it's very difficult and unfair for it to be on low-level roles. To achieve IOSH is for people who are quite experienced and got some good experience, and are doing their CPD and things. So I wouldn't expect it as a requirement of a low-level role. I think that is probably slightly unfair. However, I've been in discussions and had the argument from the other side that does the fact that adverts ask for IOSH cut people out that haven't got it, who are actually really good people? They might be a stage behind. They might be a grad or even a tech, who have got masses of experience and just not moved up those levels yet. Experience and knowledge, and could easily do the roles that you're advertising for, and they get shot down because they don't have the correct letters after their name, which I think is also a bit of a problem. But the key is, the industry could change itself a little bit, and we as health and safety professionals have this as a standard. So, the aim is to get there as a standard. If you know that jobs are going to advertise it, there is an argument to say, well, what do I need to do to get there, to be able to get those jobs that I want? So it's always worth having a look and making sure you can work your way up to it and get your work through it to get to that level. Would I say it's opened doors for me? I would say it has. And does it open doors that it wouldn't open if I didn't have it? Yes, it has. and unfortunately that is a slight part of the industry, and it's there as a tool for us to use to help us get what we need and to show the standard that we are as professionals. So I would encourage anybody to do it. But yes, there is a way for the industry to look at itself as well, and to really take into account, as she said there, especially on the low-level roles, to really say, do we need somebody with a IOSH to do an entry-level role? I don't think we do. For me, low-level roles should be, if entry-level roles should be something where somebody has got that passion to be in this industry. It might not even be that they have a general certificate yet. It's just somebody who's got some passion and drive, or maybe they've gone and got their own general certificate off their own bat, to really get them into the role and start to bring people through. I think that's the key in those sort of low-level roles.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think some of the things that Nicole and then Logan have also mentioned there, I can definitely emulate as well. So the graduate scheme that I've been partaking in is an operational one, and so I joined my business and joined my sort of role. I had an awareness of health and safety, obviously, but it's something I've developed as a intrinsic facet of daily operations. And it's only, if I was searching for roles as I was leaving university and was sort of off put by perhaps like you say, the sort of letters after the name that are associated with a sort of particular role, then that can be quite off-putting. But there are lots of avenues, and I know on some of the other webinars we've had, there are a huge number of avenues to get into health and safety. And for me, so in that sort of operational role, I became more and more exposed, and more sort of au fait with the elements of health and safety, and that sort of naturally precluded itself and naturally led on to doing the general certificate and building that experience and undertaking to sort of permit qualifications and all of that sort of good stuff. So yeah, I think I'm rambling there slightly, but there are so many different ways to get into health and safety, and different ways that you can get involved. I see Logan's got his hand up, but just a reiteration to everyone, if you do wish to sort of join the conversation with your video or your voice, please feel free to raise your hand. Yeah, I think Logan, did you want to say something on anything we discussed there?
Just ask him to unmute, and Neil should be able to.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, you all right?
Yeah, not too bad. So I just thought I'd add to your point there, Josh. One thing, being a young safety professional myself, being on LinkedIn, it was easy in the beginning to compare myself to other people. Like, okay, oh, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're getting this qualification before me. Am I doing this wrong? But one thing that my mentor helped me set my priorities straight on is everyone has their own different pace, their different way of developing. And LinkedIn's fantastic for networking, fantastic for many things, even job searching, but it's too easy to compare yourself to someone else in a similar position, or maybe they've got the job that you want. But I think it's just all about not viewing it in that way, not comparing, and just setting your own pace. You build your career your own way, and yeah, you just make it yourself.
Yeah, I know we've met before on other calls, Logan. Is you recently got a new job? Is that right? Am I correct? Oh, he's gone. If he wants to carry on.
There we go. Sorry, I'm muting myself.
That's all right.
Yeah, so I started a new position in January, and it's the one that I put in the chat before. I didn't have the qualifications for this position. It was a big jump for me. I went from being an apprentice. I started in health and safety at 16 years old. Like I said, doing things my own way. I didn't go to college. I started straight with an apprenticeship. And yeah, I got this job in January. I wasn't qualified for this position, but in the interviews, I just told them what I know and that I'm willing to learn more about safety. It's a passion. And they like that, and they were willing to obviously put me through them qualifications very fortunately. And that's one thing that I can express, like, don't not apply for that position because you don't have the qualification or the experience, because most people have that attitude and are just able to take on the responsibility with time.
No, I totally agree.
I think that's a phenomenal story, Logan. Thank you very much for sharing. I think, yeah, definitely a real inspiration for myself very early in health and safety as well. And I think Megan sort of touched on the point there as well. you touched on it, that LinkedIn is at the end of the day is a social media site, and so there are pitfalls of being involved with a social media site, as you touched on, around comparison and looking at someone else's narrative in terms of their career progression, and naturally sort of comparing that to your own. And I think it's really important, as you mentioned there, that you've just got to sometimes take a step back and say the journey that I'm on in regards to health and safety is my own personal one, and everyone will naturally progress in different ways and get different experiences. Because there are again, I look at my sort of graduate cohort. There are ones who've become very technical specialists very early on, and I can look at them and say, well, how come I'm sort of disappointed in myself for not achieving this particular qualification around operational management. But then I think, well, actually, I've probably got a more holistic, more lateral, broader sort of set of experiences, and the two are neither is better than the other. The two are sort of completely distinct. So yes, I think a really, really excellent point there, Logan. Philip, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, I think that's a really good point. And it is really difficult sometimes out there in the market, and I think we just have to try and put our best foot forward with what we can and the resources that are out there to try and get ourselves noticed. Obviously, if anybody else has any questions that they want to ask, obviously we're asking ourselves some questions here to help discussion, but if you've got any questions you want to ask us or anything you need an answer to, please raise your hands. We're more than happy to have you ask any questions. I mean, one thing for me that we talked about earlier that sort of touched on a little bit was sort of motivation and how to really stay sort of motivated during a job hunt. I think it's sort of a really big concern for job hunters, especially in our industry. People can be applying for a lot of different positions. There's positions almost daily, and people are applying for those. And we're saying, if you don't have the full experience, you should still apply. And there is always, chances where you aren't even going to get to an interview. You may be rejected at the first stage. You may get to an interview stage and be rejected then. It's all very difficult, and sometimes can affect us mentally. I mean, have you got any tips or anything that you did during your sort of job hunt, Josh, that sort of helped you keep on track and keep motivated with it?
Yeah, so I think to answer that, I'll perhaps look at two sort of cycles through which I've gone to recruitment. So immediately coming out of university for the graduate scheme, which I think, as you touched on there, in terms of mental attrition, was quite a difficult time, because the graduate market obviously is saturated at the best of times, and I was applying for a huge number of different schemes, and some of which I knew off the back of it I couldn't see myself doing for a long time period. I was interested in sort of general operations management, and I knew I was also interested in sort of sustainability, which is why I ended up sort of going for Thames Water. But I think the consistency of needing to do psychometric tests, and then a video interview, and then an assessment centre, and then potentially after that a sort of panel person interview, doing that once is fine. Perhaps a second time is again sort of fine. But once you've done that sort of 10 or so times in the space of a couple of months, it really does wear you down. And what I tried to motivate myself with was understanding that this was really just sort of a foothold, and once you get that sort of foot in the door and you begin that sort of progression, in my mind, I could see it getting easier, and I think that definitely sort of paid dividends later in this role. So, like I said, yeah, the role that I was applying for, I was doing sort of earlier this year, and it was a much nicer experience in the sense that it wasn't so just sort of logistically intense, and so. It was perhaps challenging for different reasons, because I really, really wanted the job, and I really wanted to stay with the team I was with, and I had a really good working relationship with my manager, who would continue to be my manager after I got this new role. And so the difficulties weren't so much the sort of the sheer bandwidth of time needing to spend sort of researching all these different companies, and it transitioned to basically I was nervous because I really wanted the job, and I think what I tried to do is just sit down and have conversations with personal and professional sort of allies and friends, and say, just sort of compute those nerves into sort of excitement for it, and use it into the interview. I had a couple of pages of what I knew the core values of the company were, and how I felt I aligned to them, or, as I said earlier, where if I felt myself sort of falling short, what I would then do to make that up. So I think for me, in both of those sort of different elements, in terms of when it was lots of different graduate jobs and also one specific job that I wanted, I think research was the absolute critical thing.
Okay.
And I think that was the way that it kept me motivated, and it also allayed a lot of the nervousness. And I think if you research until you physically can't really do anymore, at best, you're going to have the ability to kind of furnish your answers with great, very relevant examples. At worst, you're going to have a couple of examples to ask some really targeted, specific questions at the end of that interview, which can only go and impress the interview even more. So to keep motivated, I tried to see it as that sort of bridge to something better. And I also just made sure that I went into that interview as absolutely prepared as I could and ready for it. And hopefully that sort of stood me in good stead. Yeah.
I think those are some really, really, really good tips and points there to help try and keep you motivated. Just looking at the chat, there's a question from Peter. Says, do we need to see more benchmarking for how tough job applications actually are? Much like we were saying about LinkedIn only being the good bits, do we know how many job applications it takes on average in health safety environments before a job is achieved? Could really help with motivation to know where we are in comparison, or could it be a bit depressing depending on the stats? I think that's a really interesting point. I don't think we'll know whether it's depressing or not until we know the stats. It could be that it takes, a large amount of applications before some people are successful, and it could be both positive and negative to know that you're only a few in and there is a bit of a way to go, or you've passed that point and you're still struggling and those sorts of things. I think if you get to the point where you are applying for a lot and you're not even getting to an interview process for things that you can do, or you've got the qualifications and some of the experience for, then I think there is something to be said of going back and looking at what you're doing there, whether that's the way your CV is set out, how you're communicating your skills and experience across in that document. I know it's very difficult to try and put yourself across as a person on a single or two sheet piece of paper, but it's about making sure that you're giving them the right ticks to put you to that next step. And if you're applying for a lot and not getting to even interview, maybe there is some point to step back and have a look at what is there. One thing to just talk about, as come up in the chat, is obviously the IOSH Career Hub that we have, which also has a huge amount of resources for careers advice and CVs and how to do all those covering letters and things to be able to help you on your journey for applying for roles as well. So that's something to really think about. Says here, Peter, could be interesting to see how much time is invested to complete an application compared to the feedback the recruiter gives if unsuccessful. I think I've seen this on LinkedIn quite a lot recently, and I don't know whether this happens in every industry or whether it's just our industry, but I've seen a lot of questions about how much feedback should people be getting from recruiters or employers that are going through processes. I think for me, and obviously Josh, you may agree or disagree, I think if I send an application and I'm not accepted for an interview, I think a simple email to say, unfortunately, you've not been successful, is acceptable. I think when you start getting through an interview process and you're sitting down and talking to people, via this sort of medium, I think that ups the level really. I think for me, if we're having a face-to-face interview and I'm not successful, it would be nice to either have another face-to-face with that person to say this is the reason why, or maybe even an email with some real personal information to say this is the reason why we really enjoyed your interview, we really liked this is where you fell down, this is things you could go away and work on, and that forth. I think that would be a nice touch sort of at the interview stage and going forward, because I think sometimes I've seen on LinkedIn, people's experiences of almost being ghosted by employers.
Which doesn't facilitate that sort of respectful beginning to a professional transaction, does it? Because I mean, at the end of the day, if someone can't be bothered to send you an email after an interview, then perhaps you don't want to be working with that person, So I think what you said there, that I would expect perhaps after an interview, just a phone call, just for 5 minutes, just to say, like you said, here's what you constructively were good at, and here's perhaps what you need to work on, and that can help you shape when you go into the next interview or the next sort of cover letter being written. That helps shape and mobilize and put into kind of shape and form those shortcomings that I mentioned earlier that you need to work on. Because I think no one is perfect, but if you can identify what you need to improve on, then that's great. I also just want to return to, I think, what you discussed around some of the things that we might be able to put in place regarding, not studies, but uncovering how much time people spend on applications and what the sort of success rates are and things like that. I'm certain we can, as a future leaders group, bring together a piece of work to do something like that, because obviously our mandate really is to work out what future leaders like the people on this call need, and what would be useful for them as early career sort of IOSH professionals to really maximise the most of it. And if studies on how effective their sort of current job application rates are, then I'm certain we can facilitate something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something we can take back to our group and work with IOSH to try and get some information on to help people feel a little better in their job search. Once again, obviously, if anybody's got any questions or anybody wants to add any points or anything, please do raise your hand, and we're happy to unmute you and have you come into the discussion. We'd love to have sort of verbal discussion with people as well. So please, if you want to, more than happy to. Okay, so sort of another question that comes up quite a lot, something to really think about, is how do I, as a candidate, sell my possible lack of experience when I'm going to an interview? So I've made an application. I've got past the first stage. I'm coming to an interview. Maybe we're looking at one of these companies that's open to somebody from a different industry. How do I really sell what I can do from the industry I work in to them for the industry that they're in? How do I do that effectively, do we think?
I think Nicole's got a hand up to potentially answer that. Nicole?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you,
yeah. Yeah, I was recruited before I had any safety qualification or formal experience.
Okay.
So I work for Travis Perkins PLC, and when I went to the interview, I wanted to join safety for a sort of personal reason after my dad had an accident at work. And I think that's what kind of sold it for me, was I was personally invested in starting a career in safety. I did have a little bit of experience when I was at university. I'd done geography and environmental science. We had to do some really basic risk assessments for fieldwork and things, but I think it was more my employer kind of seen that I had the basic skills there. The sort of stuff that's kind of hard to teach, and it's quite easy to then, give me that knowledge by putting me through my NEBOSH general certificate and now doing my NVQ as well. So I think it depends on the employer if they're willing to make that investment and also have the time to do that investment with a new colleague.
I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier with regards to maybe the passion of wanting to be in the industry for those who haven't got the qualifications or the experience. I think you've obviously shown that quite early on with the fact that you've got this story to tell that your father was unfortunately injured, and that's what's driven you to do that. And I think that story alone is enough to show that you have a passion for the industry and why a company like that, when actually this is somebody who's got the drive and passion to do it, and let's give that person the opportunity. Really appreciate your input on that.
If I can just add to that as well, I think really great, Nicole, and I think what that sort of hinges on is obviously you're proactively showing that sort of transferability of skills. And I think Lawrence just put a fantastic comment on there as well. Is I think a good recruitment process would show yourself to be a really recruitable individual. It's like a good exam answer. You want to make it as easy for the person viewing your CV or viewing your LinkedIn profile to join those dots up, as Lawrence said. So I think obviously the way that you did that very effectively, Nicole, is by showing that proactivity. But if you've been working in different industries, for example, if I received a CV for perhaps a safety professional or a technician who wanted to join Thames Water and they'd previously worked in oil or petrochemicals or anything else, on the face of it, you might say not immediately sort of professionally relevant, but if they can demonstrate kind of lateral thinking, they can demonstrate the ability to work in quite high pressure environments, look at quite complex legislation, then you can build that sort of case and you can join those dots. So I think it's about making it easy as possible to prove yourself that you're recruitable.
Yes. Rebecca's just got a hand up, so I'm going to let her come in. And introduce herself and have a chat?
Hello, I started out my health and safety role as an apprentice.
Okay.
So when I was applying for additional, like extra jobs and things like that, I found one of the main questions that all of them asked was how I communicated with individuals.
Okay.
And I think a lot of times that companies are looking for people who break down the barriers between management and other individuals as well. So I think it does, well, to a certain extent, it doesn't really matter what certification you have, but it's more about communication. I started in manufacturing, and there was a big divide about the shop floor and the management.
Yeah.
And I managed to kind of break that down, and now I work in the entertainment industry, and that's a whole other kettle of fish, really.
So do you find that industry is more open discussion and less top level, low level sort of thing? You find people are more cohesive in that industry?
Yes, definitely. With a lot of people coming from different backgrounds and different walks of life, you've got to have that communication in place. And people know, some people know a lot more about health and safety than you do. They know about the different media that's happening. And I think, I think that's one of the most important things with health and safety, really, communicating. And yeah.
No, I totally agree. I think it's one of those big things that we've talked about soft skills and power skills and things like that a lot over the last few months and years, and that communication with people at every level is one of those very, very key skills. It's very difficult to sometimes to try and prove it to employers in an interview and things like that. I can imagine sometimes it can be very hard. But it's a skill that we need to have as an industry and as people looking for roles to really sell ourselves on. I don't know what your thoughts are, Josh.
No, I literally don't think I couldn't agree more with what Rebecca said there. I think a good health and safety management system is only as effective as the manner in which it's communicated to as you say, if you're in an operational or in a manufacturing role, how it's communicated to the shop floor. Because I reflect on the site that I work at. The manager's the one sat in offices looking at spreadsheets and KPIs. The teams turning the valves and lifting the pumps are the ones who are exposed to that immediate sort of risk portfolio. And if there's a breakdown in communication and transparency between those two sort of elements, then that's where things sort of go wrong. So in my mind, I like to see it not really as those two elements with a line of communication between the two. It's just like one cohesive group where managers embed the thoughts and the decision making of the frontline teams into that sort of safety management structure, and it sort of goes back around in a sort of full circle. So yeah, I don't think I could agree more, really. Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to pick your sort of brains on, Philip, was in prior to sort of going for a role, what sort of resources, IOSH or not IOSH, would you likely sort of consult to build that sort of case? So when you write that application or you amend the sort of CV for that particular role, you kind of furnish it with the most sort of precise and accurate information and the most relevant things for it. So what would you probably consult?
It depends on the situation, really. I think for me, when I was looking for work and looking for roles, I've looked for roles in both settings. So I've looked for roles while I've already been working. I've looked for job roles where I wasn't employed at all. I'd left a previous job and got nowhere to go to, and that sort of thing. And for me, they're two totally different ways of doing it. I think from a perspective of not having a job at all, I think you make that job hunt your new 9 to 5, and you put as much into it as you can. And the best way for that is a lot of time and effort sometimes. And the difficulty is, where do you go? Where do you get that information? So if you know who you're applying for, the company, you need to be looking at that company's website, finding out who they are, what they do, how they do it, how can what you know help them, and how can you help them improve from a safety perspective. Is there things that you can learn from their website about how they've done safety already, or things that they're doing. Are they IOSH accredited? ISO accredited, and things like that you may have experience in. So there's always the research on the business to do. I also found in my search that obviously having that job application, CV you're writing, having that job advert from them, you want to be making sure that you're hitting all those points. So it may be that you have to reword some of your CV to say, yes, I can do that, I can do that. And your CV for that specific job application may look totally different to another job application. Just to help you tick those boxes and make sure that you're giving them what they want. Personally, I'm not a big fan of here's a CV and you shoot it off in a million directions and sort of machine gun it around and hope that something sticks. It's not worked for me in the past.
Yeah.
But some people do that. But I think the research of the business and knowing who they are and how you can help them and trying to communicate that across is key for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I think in regards to that sort of scattergun CV approach, in a job application, I tend to have a sort of 4 pages worth of like modular elements that I look at a job advert, as you said there, research the company, build the sort of idea in my mind, and also not only how I feel I could fit into that company, but how that company could fit into me. So like I said, I think a big part for me in the application for my company was the values of that company and how I feel it's a mutual transaction in that regard. And from that, I sort of modular sort of selected the elements and condensed it down into a page or a page and a half, depending on what the role is. So if you've got that experience, you can sort of write it all down in perhaps a sort of master copy, and then I just sort of cherry pick the ones that I know are relevant.
Definitely. I think for me, I'm going to let Lawrence in a moment because Lawrence has raised his hand as well. So I'll let Lawrence in a moment. I totally agree with your sort of two-way analogy. And I think I've sort of discovered that a little bit further on in my career after I have built some experience and knowledge that I then get to a point where it is more of a two-way, and I can say, this is what I want from you, and this is what you want from me. And if those two don't come together, then it's more than mutual for you to walk away, even if they want to offer you the job. If they're not providing you with what you want, and you've got that power to do that, then yes, it definitely becomes more of a two-way conversation. I'm just going to ask Lawrence to join us. Hi, Lawrence.
Yeah, hi. How you all doing? Really good to see everybody here today. Although I'm here as sort of IOSH vice president, showing sort of support from the presidential team, I'm sort of hoping there's a couple of things I can throw in along the way. And just listening to what the two of you have just been talking about there, one thing that I've done deliberately, and I know that colleagues of mine in Costain have done, is try and expose yourself to as many different disciplines as you can. Even though we're all sort of OSH professionals on the call today, it's really useful if you've got a bit of an insight in the commercial side of things and the financial side of things and a bit of sales and try and maybe get a mentor internally who's perhaps quite a senior leader in the organization and just all those things. When you add it together, when you look at our profession, there is no other one like it, I don't think, where you deal with so many different disciplines all at once. Because if you think about it, personally, we get involved in physics, chemistry, biology, we do different facets of engineering, we get involved in the law, we get involved in behavioural and cultural dynamics and all these different things. And actually, the more that you can understand all the other disciplines around you, then the more value that you're actually going to bring to them. But of course, they're going to add stacks of value to you as well. So when you present your CV or you present yourself in an interview scenario, the more empathy that you've actually got with all those different disciplines, the more organizations are going to go, wow, this is someone who's got something a bit different and they really can talk our language, and they've gone out there to find out for themselves what everyone else in my team is up against. So I can actually see how they're knitting. And for me, that works really well. And in fact, I'm interviewing in Costain at the moment for a strategy role in my team. And the people that we're really closely looking at are not necessarily operational SHE people. Some of them have actually got quite a different set of backgrounds, because with that comes different skills, different experiences, and things that are just going to add value to us as well as us adding value to them.
That sounds really interesting. So these people have got minimal or minimal experience in health and safety and more of an expertise in another background. So are you aiming to build a team of of people with all that background knowledge from totally different areas to strengthen the health and safety team.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're the strategy team, and I've got an opposite number who deals with all the operational side as I used to. In the world of strategy, it's slightly different. You need to be able to put your foot in both camps, if you like. And I know, Josh, you'll see this from a Thames Water perspective as well. And I think what's really interesting for us is that these individuals will bring a completely different set of viewpoints, really healthy challenges. A lot of why questioning, more, but why does it work like that? Because I know from someone who's at the sharp end in a different discipline, if you turn up and you give me these things, I know it's not going to work, or I know my colleagues don't view it like that, or whatever. And it's a really useful set of insights. And you know what? It challenges us as a team as well, just to be better. Even down to things like neurodiversity and all those sorts of things as well. It's a massive opportunity for the right person.
I think great points, Lawrence. I think fundamentally, the more people you get in the room with the more sort of diverse set of opinions, the better your solutions are going to be. You're sort of challenging from lots of different perspectives, as you say. And I think so in the sort of regional safety discussions that our site has, we don't just get the ops managers and the health and safety professionals. We make sure that the process engineers, that the process scientists come in, because we can start talking about, well, behaviorally, if we start doing more of these observations in this area, and then the scientists might turn around and go, well, that's biologically impossible because of the type of work we're doing down there, or the valve we've got to change, or X, Y, and Z. And it can be simple things like that, as you say, but also, I think, as you alluded to, can also be the big sort of strategic items as well, that if everyone's aligned in a sort of general direction, the more people are sort of contributing to that solution, just the better the outcome is going to be. So yeah, really, really great points there, Lawrence. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. I think, to be fair, I think we're going to sort of bring it up to a bit of a close now. I think the next step is just for us to go through another slide with you, and please hang around, because there is a poll as well. We'd really like some views on the poll from you guys as well. So just to give you an idea from an IOSH perspective of IOSH and all the things that IOSH is offering, and some of the things we've talked about. It obviously does have the standard of excellence that makes it the industry and what it is. The competency framework is something to really look at as well if you're looking at job hunting as well. Gives you a massive help in understanding all those softer skills and things as well. Future Leaders Community is obviously what myself and Josh are part of, and some of our other members as well that have joined us today. We're here for the future leaders to try and help those starting out in their careers to receive the best information, support, guidance that they can get to help them really achieve in their beginning to their careers. So that's what we're here to do, try and help and support you people as much as possible. Networking events, obviously we have a range of networking events at IOSH, so have a look on the websites for different webinars, discussions, and IOSH groups and things like that you can get involved in. We have the IOSH mentoring scheme, which we've touched on a little bit. IOSH has its own official mentoring scheme where you can help find yourself a mentor to be able to help you and guide you on your career. But obviously, there's lots of different platforms to do that within your own places of work and to find a real mentor to help you along your way. The IOSH Benevolent Fund is a fund to help those who are struggling within IOSH. It's there to help with funding for different things. If you have any concerns or issues with regards to funding for things, you can get in touch with those and they can help and support. It's run by a great team of people who really care about others to really help get this fund going. So it's a really great part. IOSH Extras is obviously what comes with your membership, lots of different extras with regards to money off, different things. So keep your eye out. Those emails come out regularly to keep you up to date on what's in those. The magazine obviously is always coming to you, either whether that's in its physical version or through your emails. Keep your eyes on those. We have sections in those as well, so keep your eyes peeled for future leader writings and future leader articles. You never know, we may have another future leader version again as we did last year. Hopefully that could be something really interesting once again. The career hub we've talked about a little bit is another key area for you to go to help with looking for jobs and job hunting, CV writing, all those different types of things are all in there, and it's all free as part of your membership. So have a look. Lots and lots of stuff in there that you can easily get your hands on for free. And finally, the No Time to Lose campaign. If you have a look on their website, all their resources that are on there are there for you to take, and they're free as well. And that's regarding occupational cancers within the industry. So all of that information is there for you to take. So please have a look at it, and it's there for you to have and use within your workplaces.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Philip. Yeah, I think just received a message saying that this session was actually scheduled to 1:30. Apologies for that, a slight discrepancy. Philip and I are working off the timetable of an hour, so we will stick to that hour if that's all right with everyone. Just additionally to this, yeah, I think myself and Philip would definitely like to plug the Future Leaders LinkedIn community. I think we've talked about a lot of the benefits and a few of the shortcomings of LinkedIn in this session, but hopefully some of the discussions we've had here, we can definitely sort of spill over into LinkedIn, and we want to continue those sort of discussions there. So feel free to add myself and Philip on LinkedIn, and we can assist you in joining that group if you're not already part of it. And any sort of questions, whether they're technical, some of those softer skills, those questions can definitely be posed on that group, and you can get a real diverse set of answers back, as I think Lawrence alluded to as well, that sort of general strategic view. I also see that Stephen Laws, you've got your hand up. We can ask you to unmute, and if there was a sort of final thing you wanted to just add to this discussion today.
Hello.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we can hear you
there. I've had to dip in and out today, so thank you for today. But yeah, just sort of dipped in and caught as much as I possibly could. On this slide in particular, you've got about IOSH mentoring. I just wanted to introduce myself. I actually I don't really know where everyone is from, but I'm the lead mentor for the Southeast for IOSH. I try to put on 4 events a year, so 1 a quarter, and I'll put it on and I'll put it out to all the people that have come towards me for mentoring. I think we've got about 60 or 70 people at the moment. So the aim of it is really to move from wherever you're from, moving up, whether it's starting out as a student or an affiliate, moving up through tech, grad, chartered, and even into fellow. So I mean, we put these on, like I say, once a quarter, plus I'm part of the Southeast branch, which we do events on a monthly basis that anyone can come to, especially if you're a member. But yeah, the IOSH website is going to give you all that information. But if anyone wanted a bit more information on the mentoring, yeah, by all means, I don't know how it works. Maybe I can email you yourself, Josh or Philip, give you my email address, and then if someone wants it, let them know. But yeah, I'll be booking one on for maybe September, and my aim was for this one was to do moving into grad, because there's a lot of people that sit in there at grad wanting to move into chartered, but actually there's a lot of people at tech level that are not thinking about or not too sure about how they move into that next step, whether they go NCRQ or MVQ or diploma. So giving them a bit of an understanding of the different levels. And I did one a month or 2 ago that was basically on CPD, and I updated my CPD online live for everyone to see. So it gave people a real good insight as to how to do that. And then, yeah, hopefully one day we'll get back in the room and we'll actually be able to meet people. I just wanted to put that out there for everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. That's really good for us as future leaders and everything to know. So thank you for attending. I will send the poll to you now. It's just a little 4 questions. If you can take the time to obviously have a look and put your answers into there for us, that would be greatly appreciated. Obviously, as Josh said, some people thought this session maybe been an hour and a half, and you may be a little bit disappointed, which is actually really good for us, because that means that obviously we're doing something right. And if it means that this session in future needs to be longer, then that's something we can take away and look to improve. Obviously, this is the first of its kind in this session format. So obviously your feedback on the poll is greatly appreciated. It allows us to then really take away that whether you've enjoyed it or not, and to be able for us to edit it to make it what you want it to be. And if that means that it's going to have to be longer, then I'm sure we can work to make it longer.
I'm sure we can definitely facilitate that, Philip. But yeah, I think the sort of outcomes of this really is we'd love to see some of the great points that have been raised both in person and on chat. We'd love to see those continued and sort of spill over to LinkedIn, because again, as I said, that's a real useful platform to get that whole broad, lateral, strategic set of opinions coming in. So yeah, that'd be great. And myself and Philip will have a bit of a debrief from the feedback you give here, and we can look to set up some more of these sessions just to get that discussion going. So yeah, thank you everyone who's answering thus far. We'll keep it open for a little bit longer. Let's see who's coming in.
Excellent. Yeah, we're getting those in now, so that's brilliant. As I say, once again, we appreciate everybody for coming. Hopefully we can take that feedback away and really tweak it to make it what you guys really want it to be. We've covered a massive amount of topics today, from LinkedIn to job applications to the state of the industry and how we feel it should change, all in the space of 60 minutes, which is absolutely phenomenal. So we appreciate everybody coming, and we appreciate everybody's input. So thank you very much. We are now coming up to 1 o'clock, so we will be ending very, very shortly. So if you can put your final bits in onto the poll, that'll all come through to us, and we'll take a look at that and look at that on feedback. So once again, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you at another event in the near future.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you very much.